Touker, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. What a wonderful turnout.
Yeah, it's 8th week, so it's a big deal for people to come out just before exams get started.
Well, all I can say is thank you for coming out. It's cold out there. I don't know, I came up from London, it was just freezing. But I'm honoured to be here, and I am just taken aback at the history of the Union and how lucky you all are to be part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start at the beginning, if you don't mind. I believe that you came to England not speaking English and graduated from secondary school. You're now worth over £200 million. Could you walk us through...
Who told you that?
Could you walk us through your personal journey?
Well, I can. I mean, very quickly. I mean, I was born in northern Cyprus, and my parents had the foresight. In 1959, Northern Cyprus was British, and they immigrated to the UK. And I remember distinctly when I was about 5 years old. You can work out my age in a minute. Who's worked out my age? Cool, you're not good at maths, are you? Well, for those of you who don't know, I am 68. But I feel 21. But so at the age of 5, I came to the UK. My parents were immigrant family. They went into the restaurant business. I went into a normal comprehensive school. Had a bit of a lapse when I was 11, when I had a little operation on my hand, and I was told it was to be amputated straight there. But I saved my hand. I was a good squash player when I was young, played for the south of England. And then I think it was not until I left school, and I left school with a few A-levels and O-levels, and I was going into accountancy. And my first job was with a company called Ridley & Co. on Southampton Row, and my salary then was £5 a week. That was my first salary. But I soon got bored of that, and by accident, I got into the fashion business through my grandmother, because while we were doing an audit, I brought some clothes home from one of our clients. She sold them to her friends, and she wanted more, and it just snowballed. And I think at the age of 21, I probably made my first million by accident. At the age of 27, I was chairman of 2 public companies. So you work out, this was in 1980. This was before regulations, before anything, before the Big Bang. And I found myself the youngest ever chairman of 2 public companies. The last public company was a retail business which the brokers convinced me to invest in. Little did I know that they had a lot of clients who were invested in that company and they wanted the share price to go up. Anyway, to cut a long story short, we did a review of the business at the time with a company called Coopers & Lybrand. Who knows who Coopers & Lybrand are today? Coopers & Lybrand today are PwC. Who knows who PwC is? Right, okay. So Coopers & Lybrand Coopers & Lybrand became PwC. And we did a review of that business, and that business, prior to the review, showed on their balance sheet they had 20 million net assets. After a review, everything was fraudulent, overvalued. It was minus 20 million. And all my private companies and everything, it was like a snowball effect. Bang, bang, bang. I lost everything. I had a beautiful house, which was geared to the bank. The bank never forced me to sell, but I sold the house, paid the bank back, had to start all over again. Probably my best lesson was always do your due diligence before you acquire something. But at my age, it was, in those days, it was very much, you buy a share, all of a sudden the shares went from 3p to £4, and you think at a young age you can walk on water. It's not quite like that. But anyway, but from there on, I created my own factories offshore, manufacturing clothing for the high street, mainly for BHS, M&S, other retailers, and was successful. And what I did very wisely was I invested a lot of money into commercial property. So property is always a good asset to have in the UK. You know, if you don't have too many borrowings and you know how to control your cash, always good to have property. And I think I grew from strength to strength until I then decided to go into having my own brands. So I bought Hawes and Curtis for £1. And we can talk about that later if you want to ask me any questions on that. And how when I bought it for £1, it had about £1 million worth of debt. And how I engineered that debt and bought all the debt out for 100,000, where I negotiated with the creditors. I then went on to buy a brand called Ghost. Some of you ladies might know Ghost. And then subsequently went on to become a dragon. And how did I become a dragon? I was approached, would I go for an interview to be on Dragon's Den? And I just thought, there's no way I'm going to be a dragon. And I did a screen test. I didn't hear anything for 2 months. Then I got a call from the producer who said to me, come and have lunch with me. And I said, sure. You know, I said, I'll book it in town. He said, no. He says, you're in London, I'm in Manchester. Come up for lunch to Manchester. I thought, it's a long way to go for lunch. Anyway, I got on the train and compliments, BBC had a car waiting for me, went straight to the restaurant, and within 5 minutes of arriving, Steve Hadley, who was the producer then, said to me, Touker, I want you to be my dragon. There was I, taken aback. And hence the fact I took on the role. I think at the time there were 3 new dragons. There was myself, Sarah, and Nick. There was a big reshuffle. And that was it. And since then, I've been on Dragon's Den for 8 years. Probably within my portfolio, we've got 3 fashion businesses. We've got 20 odd other businesses. Very heavily invested in property. We do a lot of what I call pro bono work for a lot of small businesses that need help. I never say no if I've got the time. Stephen here knows what I mean, who works for me. And my aim really is to give back where I can to young entrepreneurs, put them on the right track. And it's not always about money, it's about winning. Although one of my key aspects to any business that anybody wants to get involved in is that cash is king. So if you are going to start a business or you're in business or you're doing something without proper cash flow planning, you can go really wrong. You know, so there's a lot of questions I'll take for as long as it takes. I know we started a bit late, but I'm willing to stay a bit later.
Thank you.
Not an issue for me. You know?
Well, let's go back to the
Sure.
where you said where you lost everything. Could you talk us through a little bit what that was like, having become so successful so fast and then facing that sort of huge downfall?
I was very fortunate that I was in my 20s. I was still single. I didn't have children or a wife, so that was a big savior. But I think what really got me going was that I felt that I was dealt a wrong card, and I felt I was tricked by the city into getting involved in businesses which they knew weren't right. I was over my head. Now today it's very different. Today, you know, you've got a whole organization of bankers, accountants, VCs, very different. In those days, it was the Wild West. You know, it was the stockbrokers who could, with a pick of a phone, could make a share price move up or down, either way. So I think at the time, I just felt determined to bounce back.
And what advice would you give to the members here today who might be interested in going into business, becoming entrepreneurs, but feel that sense of being overwhelmed or out of their depth or worried about the failures?
Never be overwhelmed. Never feel out of your depth. You're all very privileged to be here. You're all very intelligent. And speaking to some of you, I mean, I hear some of you want to get into politics, some of you want to do whatever. But if you want to get into business, it's very easy today. In my day, there was no internet. There was no mobile phones. There was no social media. There was no VCs. There was no angel investors. It was just the banks. And they were like pawnbrokers. You put your house up, they lend you money. Very different. So my advice to you is very simple. If you want to be an entrepreneur, first of all, see where the gap in the market is. So in a lot of cases, you don't need to be a scientist or an inventor. You can take this bottle and decide to do it better or more sustainable or more attractive or a different way of producing it. You can take any product, just make it better and more cost-effective and disrupt the market.
And you are famously associated with the fashion industry. You said you got into it through your grandma.
Yeah.
Was there a point where you decided, okay, this is the industry I'll stay in? Or was it sort of a natural thing that you...
Well, I'll tell you, when I was an accountant, earning £5 a week, I was given a job to look after the sole entrepreneurs. So in those days, I was given property developers. There was a section for doctors and dentists. There was a section for celebrities and a section for fashion entrepreneurs. So this was in the 76, 77, 1977, that is. And then I realized that they were the four industries at the time which young entrepreneurs were making money. And that's how I got into the fashion business.
And let's speak about Hawes and Curtis, buying it for £1 and turning it round.
Yeah.
Did you have a plan when you bought it?
Yeah, well, I think what happened was that I had a very big manufacturing business in Turkey at the time, and we were supplying shirts to Ralph Lauren Europe, and making shirts for Ralph Lauren, and it was easy. And I quite liked the fact that shirt production was quite easy. There's a collar, cuff, placket, side seams, And I said, why can't I? And then one day I walked down Jermyn Street and I saw all these brands and I thought, yeah, I could do this. So next thing I did was that I looked at all the accounts of every brand on Jermyn Street. And up popped up Hawes and Curtis that said that they were virtually bankrupt. So they were owned by a company called Cordins, who was still there, and Cordins was struggling to keep it afloat. So, and I think Cordins were under a lot of pressure to pay the creditors. So I approached Cordins and said, I'd like to buy Hawes and Curtis off you. And they said, yeah, we want £2 million. So I said, I'm sorry? I said, unless you've got an oil well. They had one shop, by the way. So unless you've got an oil well in the shop or you found gold, I can't see where it's worth. Anyway, we went into deep discussions, and I said, well, look, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I will take over all the debt, and I will just pay you £1. And then you can just walk away and focus on your own business. And that's what happened. First thing I did was I called every creditor and said to so-and-so, look, you're owed 100,000, the company's insolvent. Unless I do a deal with all the creditors, it'll probably go into insolvency. Here's 10 grand. I said, yes. Here's 20. And I did the round. And I wrote a check out to everybody. So it ended up, I think, costing me at the end 100,000 odd pounds for the brand and one store. What I then realized was that one store wasn't enough, because in order to have exclusivity of raw material, you needed to order enough shirts for 600 shirts per design. So if you can imagine, you've got 150 designs, there's no way that you're going to be buying so many shirts for one store. So very quickly, I started growing the chain. I think we ended up with 40 stores eventually. And sort of snowballed the business very quickly. We went through a patch where we probably opened too many stores in light of what's going on with business rates and rents, and we spent the last few years closing stores and opening stores again. So it's a vicious circle.
And what challenges do you think the fashion industry specifically is looking at currently? Do you think that we've seen a rise in sort of short-term trends, as some people have said?
Look, the biggest challenge is inflation. What you've got is perfect storm across the board. You've got transport costs, container costs from around the world, especially from China. They were $2,000 a container. They're now $25,000 a container, tenfold. You've got raw materials have all gone up. You've got energy costs have all gone up. You've got labor costs are rising. So whereas we've had deflation for the last 20 years in fashion, we're now seeing the first honest inflation. And I think inflation will rise to above 10% in fashion in the next, it started now, but in the next 6 to 12 months.
And what are you doing to prepare yourself for that?
I think you've still got to give good design, good quality, good value. So if you follow those principles, I think people will pay more if they think that they are getting value for money. Luckily enough, Hawes and Curtis were in that value end. I mean, we're selling, I think, 4 shirts for £139, whatever. If you go to some brands, you'll pay that for 1 shirt. So we're still offering the value and the quality. The value and quality is the two things that won't change. Because I think people want value, people want quality, and they'll pay for it if they think they're getting both. And
when you came to Dragon's Den, you talked about becoming a dragon. But a lot of people, I think, wonder why an investor who's so successful would take time out of their career, I suppose, to join a TV program. Was it something you saw as a genuine opportunity for investment or more of a...
Well, I'll tell you, it's very funny because what it's done, it's broadened my horizon in different businesses. So I've got lots of investments now in the baby world. We've got investments in coffee. We've got investments in cycling business. We've got investments in, I can't think about, all sorts of different businesses. Knitting business, in toy business, you name it. So what it's done, it's broadened my horizon in what I can do. And I now know a lot more about different industries than I would have known. And also, if I have to be totally honest, it's the best black book in the country. I could call anybody and they'll pick up the phone. So that alone helps me to help other people.
And do you have a favourite investment that you've invested on during Dragon's Den?
There's one recently which comes to mind, which affects everybody here really. I don't know, how many of you watched Dragon's Den? How many of you watched Dragon's Den where Jenna 8, Sam Jones, long-haired guy, came on about data, protecting your data, which is a big subject today. So Jenna 8 came on Dragon's Den and he pitched it dead right. It was the best pitch that I've ever seen in Dragon's Den, where you give permission to generate to control your data and your cookies, and they use your data to make money and give some of that back to you. Now, they came in the den at the valuation of the company at the time at 600,000. It was worth a lot more than that. Peter and I invested. The day after it was aired, they were issuing shares at 12 million. And now they're issuing new shares at 25 million. Now, you could say that if it wasn't for Dragon's Den, Sam would not have had the exposure. And now everybody is piling in. Okay, it is a brand new sector. I think the market is saying to itself, is this the next unicorn? Is it going to be £1 billion company, or is it going to go bust? I don't know. I mean, I'm in it for the ride. Sam occupies premises where I am, so I have to keep an eye on him, make sure he behaves himself. But that's probably been my most exciting investment.
And what made the pitch so good? You said it was the perfect pitch.
I think it was the accuracy of the way he pitched it, the numbers, the market. It just flowed very easily to understand what the business was, what the challenge was for the business, the potential of the business, and he pitched it at a very low valuation because he wanted to draw us in. He was more after the dragons rather than the money. And sometimes people come in and they overvalue their businesses and they don't get a dragon. Whereas if you pitch it right, many a times I've said, well, he's looking for 150,000 for 5%, but if you come in for 50, even for 3%, I might have just taken a punt on it and said, let's see. But 150,000, I just think.
And what advice would you give to any of the members who maybe are preparing their own pitches, getting ready to come and face the dragons?
So do you have a Dragon's Den pitch here?
We should have one.
You don't have one, right. Look, I think there's two things. First of all, you've got to believe in your business or your idea or your service or whatever it may be. You've got to believe passionately about it. You've got to ask yourself, what's the USP? What have I got that I can honestly say is different? Am I disrupting the market? Is it a new invention? Am I reinventing something? And then decide, how do you start? And in most cases, my advice to you is, if you want to raise money, do not go out and raise money from a VC or go to family and friends to start with. Because you don't want to give away too much too early in your equity. A lot of people start off with giving too much away early, and by the time they've built the business, they've got 3%. I mean, I would always avoid, if I'm investing in an entrepreneur, I want the entrepreneur to have at least 50%. At least. Because in a way, what incentive can you give an entrepreneur if you take it all away from them? So my advice to you is raise your money for family and friends. Try and prove concept if you can. And you'd be amazed what you can do if you really put your mind to it. And I think coming on Dragon's Den, sometimes you can come with an idea. And the idea might be fantastic. But my advice is always come with a plan. You know, if you're pre-revenue, say I'm pre-revenue, but this is the market, this is what I intend to do with the market, this is how I intend to disrupt the market, and that's where I'm going. You want to be on that journey with me? Then invest.
And which dragon do you find you have the most competitive relationship with?
All of them.
There's not one that you've got a rivalry?
No, look. Can I be honest with you? When we're in the den, we are dragons. And when we're out the den, we're great friends. Okay, I always have a little chip at Deborah, because she's fun to have a chip at. I mean, Stephen's just come on board, had a little chip at Stephen, just to keep... But it's... Part of that is TV. And just to give you a bit of background. So each pitch takes about an hour to hour and 15 minutes. And what happens is the BBC that edit that to about 10 minutes. So they take bits and they play around with what you say, and you say, I didn't say that. You know? I mean, there was a thing with Stephen and I the other day where Stephen said something to me, and I said, what do you know about business? And what I said to him was, what do you know about the sourcing business? But they took out the sourcing and they kept the business. Of course, you know, Stephen's 28 and I'm 68 and I've got 48 years of experience in business. But it was not meant to come across that way, but that's the way it came across. But in a way, I think Stephen's new dragon, young dragon, he's brought a new dynamics to the show. We've got Deborah there, I believe she's been here, Deborah. She holds her IP wise words together. Peter's the anchor of the show. He's been there for 17 years. And you've got Sarah, who now has become a bigger celebrity by doing Strictly. So all the dragons got second day jobs. They're dragons and they're celebrities and they're social medias, whatever they are.
Is there a Strictly run for you in the future?
No. The one thing about me is I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not a celebrity. I still go to the office every morning. No, and I still am there till the end of the evening, every day. I don't take days off. I am your real entrepreneur, hands-on. Every product that comes out of that building, and that's to do all the companies I look at, and I give my views. So I'm hands-on, much more than a lot of entrepreneurs.
And do you think you'll ever move out of that industry onto something else?
I'm always open to suggestions. Look, as I said, we're just starting. There's a new bike shop that we're opening outside Westfield, London. And that's going to be a 5,000 square foot bike shop. That's a new entry for myself. We are just invested in a coffee brew business called Silly Goose. We're just about to invest in a second-hand upmarket clothes business called Loop Generation. We probably invest more outside the den than in the den. It's just we're all the time. So there's a wide selection of things we're investing in.
Has the number of things that you've invested in outside of the den grown since you've also had the exposure of being inside the den, or has it?
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, we get approached all the time. I think a lot of people that approach me, I try and help where we can. You know, we got people coming in, they've got a product. I have a team that runs all my small investments. I say, guys, let's call up Sainsbury's or Boots, or let's see if we can help this person get their product in front of the buyers. So we do that before we invest.
And looking back, you said you've been in the business for quite a long time now. Are there any investments that you really regret, or investments that you wish you'd taken up that you regret not doing?
I never have any regrets, because life is not about regrets. Life is about looking forward and saying that there'll be another opportunity somewhere down the line. I mean, you could say, I've got regrets of not investing in Tesla or in Facebook or in whatever. You know, you don't think of it that way. You just think about moving forward.
And what surprised you most in your career? Is there anything? What
surprises me is that nothing surprises me. As I get older, and I take loads of things on the chin, and I'm listening to my young team about what's going on. I didn't have a clue about TikTok or about social media. Now I'm embracing whatever's new with some old values.
Could you tell us a bit more about how you're going to apply old values to...
Well, the biggest old value that I've got, especially as an entrepreneur, is it's about cash. I keep going back to cash, because cash is the lifeblood of any business. If you haven't got cash flow or cash, you can't run a business. How many of you have got small businesses that you're running now? Okay, and how many of you always come across the problem cash flow? Right? And whether you're, as I call the expression, ducking and diving, family, friends, but you find a way. But it's all about cash. Because without cash, that business cannot run. And I think one of the things I learned at a very young age, not young, in my 20s, when things went wrong, it's all about cash flow. And I think that, if your two things is, if you have a business and you have a problem with your cash flow, whether you've got a bank or you've got investors, be upfront early. Talk to your bank at the beginning and say, this is my problem. This is my plan, but this is my problem. Talk to your family, talk to your friends. That's what it's about. There's no point putting your head under the carpet and saying, oh, how do I get out of this? Banks will listen. Some banks will. Friends and family. But don't hide the fact that you're in trouble. Get as much help as you can at the very beginning.
Well, I'm keen to leave time for some audience questions. If you do have a question, just raise your hand and we'll have a member of our team bring a microphone around to you. I recognise the member just over here.
Hi, hello, thank you for being here. I have a kind of chicken and egg question. What do you think came first, the entrepreneur or the idea?
What do I invest in?
Just generally, what do you think comes first? Do you think entrepreneurs are born entrepreneurs and then they look for ideas? Or do you think that anyone can see an idea and then become an entrepreneur?
Look, I think there are different types of entrepreneurs. There are natural entrepreneurs who probably start buying and selling things on the school gates at a very young age. And they're the ones that probably end up not going to university, who really are wheelers and dealers. And then you've got a different style of entrepreneur today who are much more sophisticated, who probably go into the legal system or go to the city and end up being entrepreneurs based on what they've learnt. So we've got this dual entrepreneur. But to be an entrepreneur, you have got to say to yourself, I want to do this. It's within yourself. Nobody's going to give it to you. There's no free lunches anywhere. And the whole point really is entrepreneurship is having the willpower to go it alone or to go it with a partner or whatever. But to do something for yourself, that's entrepreneurship. And it doesn't mean because you fail, it's over. Because I always say failure, it's a result. It's not the end of the journey. You fail, you pick yourself up, you go. In the States, if you don't fail, they don't respect you. They honestly believe in the US that if you fail and you've learned by your mistakes, then you're worth investing in. It's not quite like that here, but it's getting that way. So if you have started a business or you fail, it's never too late to stop, change direction, start again, draw a line, keep on going, keep on trying, And
what kind of entrepreneur do you think you are? A sort of wheeler and dealer or more technical?
I'm definitely a wheeler dealer. Because I came up the hard way. I actually remember, going to factories that I owned. I opened the first factory in Bulgaria in 88, 89 when the wall came down, and started the factory. There was no food there. I had to bring M&S food to Bulgaria to eat. So I've done things the hard way. I've picked up fabric and moved the fabric, and I've done it all. So I've not had I've had an adventurous life, you could say. So I am your typical down-to-earth, Mr. Not know-it-all, but I have an opinion, because I think when you get to my age, you've lived through a lot. and I've lived through a lot. And today, when I see people say, well, I made a fortune out of Bitcoin, I say, well, I don't touch Bitcoin. I think it's a scam myself, but everyone's got their own view. But I always say to people, I've earned my money doing this. Sweat, blood and tears. That's how I've earned my money.
And we'll look for another question. I recognise the member just at the front here in the glasses. Yeah. Fantastic.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So first of all, thank you for speaking to us today. Oh, sorry. You mentioned in some of your videos, sort of posts online, you mentioned to never forget your roots.
Yes.
In some talks you've given. I wanted to know if your Turkish Cypriot upbringing has ever influenced some of the decisions you've made in the British market. And secondly, what advice you'd have for young British Turks, such as myself, to succeed in life, sort of not only in business, but in life, as many of our immigrant parents want for us so dearly.
Look, I came to the UK in 1959. So I was already very embedded into society by the time I went into business. I always don't forget my roots. I was born in Cyprus, in northern Cyprus, of Turkish Cypriot origin. I'm not embarrassed to talk about it. I think no matter who you are, where you're from, doesn't matter. If you look around this room, there's people from every society. I don't think being Turkish or being, I'm not sure where you're from, but Nigerian and China, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you're from. That should not stop you. We live in an international world. The UK has open arms for everybody to be entrepreneurs. If you go up to Bradford and Manchester, and you see the multicultural of people who have got small businesses. So there's no free rides for Turks. The same ride as everybody else. Does that answer your question?
Thank you so much.
We'll take a question from the member just at the back here.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for your time. So I have a question. So I'm an entrepreneur. I started a company 5 years ago. And as you say, cash is king, right? So during those 5 years, we have gone through a lot of loans through the bank. But at this point, we are growing and we need more cash, right? So one option is either going to the bank or the other one is looking for investors.
Yep.
And my question is when do you know it's the right time to approach to the investors? Because right now I'm if I approach to the investors, I'm going to keep my business, right? So I don't know, when is the appropriate time to go for the investor and ask for that money and that new partner?
Okay, so I think what happens is, and you know this, banks are there. In a lot of cases, banks are like pawnbrokers. You're making money, they lend you money. You're not making money, they won't lend you money. I think there comes a point where you want to catapult the business without putting too much debt on the company that the company can afford to pay. That's when you decide to bring in outside investors. And in some cases, you'll get a much better valuation. So what does the business do?
It's food company, so we package products and we sell in national market and international market.
Right. So basically, you have a business where you're importing and you're selling.
We produce, yeah.
Yeah, and you get paid quite quickly?
Yeah. Local markets, yeah, international markets.
So, sorry. So my advice to you is, every business comes to a point where they need investment. And you have to understand that point where you say, if I borrow more money from the bank, it puts more risk on the business. I don't want the business to have a real risk if there's a downturn. Better to give a little bit away and sleep at night. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, great, thanks.
Good.
We'll take a final question from the member on the end, just here.
We can have a few more.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not? We'll give everybody a chance.
Perfect.
I'm here now, it doesn't matter.
Hi, Touker. Thanks for coming to speak to us today. So my question for you is, when on Dragon's Den, what do you look for or see in a person that makes you think, yes, I want to invest in them?
Well, the most important thing when I decide to make an investment is the entrepreneur. We've invested in businesses I've invested in businesses where great idea, but the entrepreneur just can't get on. We've had a few where we've had to sell our shares back to them because they were thieves, they were liars, you name it. So I think for me, I quickly evaluate the entrepreneur and decide then, is that a business that I want to be involved in? Can I add value to that business? And, there are some cases where we do a little charity work, but that's it. It's mainly the entrepreneur. Because at the end of the day, I'm not going to run their business for them. They've got to run their own business. And unless they can do that in a proper professional manner, then I don't want to invest.
And how do you evaluate the entrepreneur? Are there any specific characteristics that you look for?
I've been doing it for 48 years. It takes me about 2 minutes. There's one investment which we invested in a little baby product called Matchstick Monkeys. I don't know if any of you got any babies, but it's a teething toy for babies. And I think she came in with just a little idea. It took about 4 minutes to invest because I believed in the entrepreneur and the product. It was just instant. So it's gut feeling. And I have a lot of gut feeling.
We'll take 1 or 2 more questions.
Yeah, I don't mind. Look, it depends. Another 10, 15 minutes? Can we do that?
Just looking to the
right.
camera team at the back. We'll take one from the member just here anyway.
Hello, Touker. Thank you for being here. It's an extension to the question, actually. What kind of mental models have you developed across the years from investing in companies that you've used either in Dragon's Den or in your private funds?
Mental
morals.
Can I tell you something? Sometimes you've got to be like steel. Mental morals. I always look upon what's right for the entrepreneur. There's one. That's a moral in itself. Never want to take away too much of the business from an entrepreneur, and try and get them motivated in running their business, helping them where we can. In a lot of cases, an entrepreneur we invest in runs out of cash, we put more cash in. So it's an ongoing process of helping an entrepreneur. Never stops. You don't just give them the money and just forget about it.
We'll take a question from the member just here.
It's funny how everyone's livened up now.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll try and make it quick and we'll do a few more.
Hello. So you say you've been doing this for 48 years now, and I'd just like to ask, have you ever invested in a business where you've then later regretted investing? And then if so, why?
In most cases, it's the entrepreneur. If I invest in a business that's failed, let's say, which I haven't done up to now, but it's my decision. But if I invest in a business where the entrepreneur is not what I thought it was, that's when it's not a good feeling.
We'll take a question from the member just here. In the pink photo.
So thank you for being here, like everyone else said. So one of the questions that I had for you, so I'm in law school, I'll be a lawyer, right? So this is, I'm going to make money, hopefully. So one of the things is, you have entrepreneurs who don't go to business school, those who do go to business school, and then they invest in people who can, engage in the walk and engage in the talk. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, do you have any recommendations of like literature or like scholarship that kind of helped you along the way for people who kind of are just starting from the ground to educate themselves?
Can I be honest with you? Hard experience is where it's at. You can go and read these business books that would just give you some sort of inkling. But at the end of the day, having your own decisions to make in your own business, picking up the phone yourself, doing it yourself, that's the greatest experience you can have.
And I'd like to finish by asking you a question that we ask all of our speakers, which is if you could leave our audience with one thing to think about for the rest of the week, something to take away with them, what would that be?
Well, look, I think, at the moment, we are living in uncertain times, as we all know. And I think life will go on. The most important thing, really, is to find your purpose. Your own inner purpose. What is your purpose in life? If you've got a purpose, you've got a journey, then make that goal. Write out that journey, how to get there. If you think that the man who started Alibaba in China, he went for a job to work. Was it some Burger King 30 times? They didn't get the job.
Tourist guy.
Yes, right. So have your purpose. Never give up, because you're always allowed another chance. Just think of the people who are suffering from illness. Think of the people who are at the moment in Ukraine, those refugees. You're in a much more fortunate position. And my thing is, if you're very determined, you've got the passion, you've got the purpose, there's no reason why you can't end up where you want to go.
Well, thank you so much. I'm sorry we don't have more time to discuss things. Perhaps we can go for a drink in the bar after this. But it's been an absolute pleasure to host you. Thank you for joining us. Please join me in thanking Touker.